Hi, I'm your host, Anand J. Sukadia, and this is the Limitless One podcast. Join me on this journey as I interview the most inspirational souls who are tapping into their limitless blueprint on a mental, physical, and spiritual level to thrive in uncertain times. If you feel you are so much more than just this body, just this life, and want to tap into your limitless potential, you're in the right place. Here we go, starseeds. What if all the answers to our world's biggest questions were found in the sacred texts of ancient India? Science, mathematics, technology, lost history, spirituality, and health. Today, we are diving into ancient India's vast wealth of knowledge with our guest, Amish Shah. We will be unlocking many of its mysteries. Amish Shah is an entrepreneur, filmmaker, and visionary who builds businesses that guide people to their source of true potential. From Ayurveda to meditation to Vedic astrology and more, his businesses harness this wisdom and spread it through leading-edge technology platforms, media projects, and humanity-first initiatives designed to transform millions of lives. Amish and his companies have been featured 3 times on Inc. 500's list of fastest growing companies, has over 110 million in online sales, and has spent over 20 years in health, wellness, and spirituality. Welcome to the Limitless One podcast, Amish Shah. How you doing, brother?
Good. How are you? Good to
Doing
see you.
great. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You've been on my radar for almost a decade now. I originally watched your Dwarka documentary years ago. I don't even know what year it was, but I was just fascinating because maybe we could just talk a little bit about that documentary because actually you have the location of Dwarka is literally in my dad's backyard in Cambay or Khambhat that's known as in India. But maybe you can tell us a little bit about that to start.
Yeah, it was like a fascination as a child growing up, basically. I'd hear these stories of like the from the Bhagavad Gita and this big war and all these like machines and like flying, they were flying around and like lightning bolts, like shooting lightning bolts from the sky. And I'm like, okay, like sure, mom, sure, dad. And then this was passed down, and I was just like, okay, like great stories, great moral, ethical, value-based stories. And then as I started getting older, I started to realize it was actually through Graham Hancock. And I remember kind of stumbling upon something where he said, yeah, Dwarka like exists. Like they found proof near where current day Dwarka exists. And then I did like, and basically that led me down this path of like, well, is this real or is this not? And I started doing research into the government of India's papers and anything publicly available. And, growing up in America as an Indian kid was unique in in a way. You go home and you're eating your Indian food and you're doing all these like rituals and prayers and stuff. And then you go outside and like playing basketball and eating hot dogs and like, whatever else. Or pizza, so it's almost like there was like 2 lives that I had to some extent. And one side was my Indian heritage from India, where it was full of amazing stories and culture and heritage and all this stuff that was also, when I'd go back to India, I'd experience and be like, wow, it's a completely different world, like quite literally. And that fascination of not just the Western world, but the Eastern world also is kind of what just led this curiosity of like, what if this place is actually like real? What if this place really did exist? Not just a coincidence that they found this old temple there and they found an underwater city that kind of resembles Dwarka, but like, what if this actually exists? So that question was burning for me. And what led me to this moment, actually, it was interesting, and I'll do. Can I say the story of like what led
Yeah,
me to the
absolutely. We
moment
got all the time in the
of
world.
actually going to Dwarka?
Yeah.
Because that's a lot, right? So the year was like 2011-ish. Well, let me back up a little bit even more. Again, I'm going to go back to the duality of Indian and American. So on my side, the American dream was like come on, like you got this, like go make money and succeed and be smart and get A's and whatever else like was involved. Because my parents were immigrants, right? We didn't grow up with much. Their parents didn't have much. And so it's like being in a new world. It's like, wow, like, you know. So in my early 20s, I hit success at a very young age. And I feel like a lot of that curiosity kind of went away and it turned into like money and turned into like all kinds of weird habits of addictions and alcohol, like just abuse of stuff because I was partying and had this huge business, a multi-million dollar business in my early mid to late 20s. And I didn't know what to do with that much money. And actually, what ended up happening is I was depressed, I was suicidal. My cholesterol when I was 29 years old or 30 years old was 370, near adrenal failure, like migraines and sinus infections like every like few weeks. And I didn't know what the hell was going on. Like I was just like, what's going on? Obviously, my lifestyle was playing a part of it, right? So I remember being there in my house in La Jolla, 6,000 square foot house, had an elevator, a theater room, a pool on the roof, a whole view of the Pacific Ocean. My Ferrari was there, and I was in the shower and I could see all of this basically. And I just remember thinking like, I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to live here and I don't want to be on this planet anymore. Like, what's the point of all this? Like, this is bullshit, I'm not even happy. And me and my business partner weren't getting along. Just so much didn't feel right. So I decided to just kind of push the reset button. I was sick. I wasn't mentally clear. Like I just need to get rid of everything. So I literally just got rid of everything. And I went back inside and I said, what is the thing that used to bring you joy when you were younger? And where did you feel happiness? And where did you feel safe and secure? Because right now you don't, right? So I went back and I said, when I was younger, reading books about like UFOs and megaliths and things like that when I'm like 8, 9 years, 10 years old, like, super young. Everyone else is reading like Tom Sawyer and I'm like in these like weird books about vampires and like, I was always like that kid, I guess. So I went back to that and I was like, I just love ancient stuff. Whenever I'm not like focusing on my business, I'm researching ancient stuff. Why is that? Like, there's something going on here. So at the time, I was doing marketing and I was selling marketing courses on how to market online and how to buy ads. And we had a piece of software that was doing really well. And I just realized like that's not who I was or what I wanted, or I don't even know how that had manifested in such short time and took me off my track to some extent. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to dedicate my whole life to this ancient wisdom. I don't know what that looks like. I'm from the software marketing, paid ads, media buying world. How am I going to now go into these ancient, like, what am I going to do with ancient wisdom? So there's three things that came up for me. I love sacred geometry, specifically yantras and the power of yantras since I was like 16 years old. So I've done a ton of research on that. The lost city of Dwarka would bring me like so many questions about like who are we and where do we come from and was that real and I'm from India, like what, like how is that possible, and then the third was how am I going to get healthy, and that was going to be through Ayurveda because I had seen all the doctors, I had gotten ultrasounds, MRIs, CAT scans, surgeries, prescription drugs, and they kept telling me that nothing is wrong with me. Meanwhile, I'm in pain every single day of my life. And so I was like, okay, I got rid of all the businesses, kind of pushed the reset button, got rid of the cars. It took a while to kind of reset all of these kind of things in my life. And I was like, okay. And my wife got pregnant at this time. And it was about 6 months before she was due, or 5 months, 3 months before she was due. And I was like, I got to go to India. This is in 2012, right around um, yeah, 2012-ish. If you remember in 2012-ish, that was also a pretty epic year in terms of timing and the Mayan calendar and the star constellations. And I think it was like a mini awakening at the time for a lot of people,
For sure.
for a lot of people. And so something just hit me, and I was pushing in the middle of pushing the reset button that I need to go to Dwarka. And I was like, no, like stop, like you're crazy, and I was really deep in meditation and it just kept coming back, Dwarka, Dwarka. And in full transparency, something that came to me was actually on a psychedelic journey. That it was I remembered in that journey that the first time I ever really did like a psychedelic was just like why I'm here, what I'm here to do. It made me remember like the connection, and I remember seeing like this temple with like a triangle flag, and I was like, wow, it's like this temple. It was like it looked like a beautiful Indian temple with this triangle flag at the top, and I remember seeing that in my vision, and I was like, okay, like whatever that means. And I remember researching about Dwarka and looking at the temple, and sure enough, was the temple with the triangle flag. And I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm gonna go there. I've never shot a movie. I've done some videos for the internet and marketing and YouTube and things like that, but nothing really like I don't know what I'm gonna do if I go there, but I wanted to shoot a video log, to be honest with you. That's what I thought. I was like, I'll do a video blog. I'll take my little handy cam at the time because iPhones were good, but not that good at the time. Um, and this is in 2012, like I said, or no, 2011. And I told my wife, and she's like, okay, I guess I'm doing 3 months. And I was like, I was like, something is telling me like I have to do this. And also, I was like, because I was sick and not feeling well, it felt like a very spiritual thing to me. It felt very connected to my lineage. It felt very connected to the 2012 timing of activations and things like that. And something was just calling me, deep calling of like, what is this? Like, what is Dwarka? Why did it exist? And the story goes that Krishna lived there. And Krishna is the most worshipped god in India, basically, across almost every single state in India. It's the most, widely accepted as well. One of the most widely, I won't say the most, but one of the most widely. So it was really fascinating that he lived in Dwarka, fought wars in Dwarka, and would shoot missiles from the ground to the sky to destroy machines against his enemy. And then the enemy would shoot down projectiles to the ground. And they said that the enemy came in a flying machine, which was granted to him by one of the lords of the celestial realms, Indra.
Sounds like Star Wars.
Exactly. And I'm sitting there researching this and I'm like, okay, like am I really going to research flying machines, ancient wars, nuclear weapons? I don't know. I don't know, but I just knew I needed to do it. I just knew it, like inside of my threads of my being. And so that led to me going. I brought my little video log camera, and while on the journey there, slash the day before, I started emailing frantically people like because there was no videos on YouTube, there were no blog posts. People didn't know really what Dwarka was in 2011. Like literally, there was not a lot of stuff on the internet about it. And I was like, how come there's nothing about this? Like, is this like some weird cover up, So, even some of that mysterious, like, why did they stop the excavations in the 60s? Like, why would you stop if this could prove that this could be one of the oldest civilizations on the planet and this war happened and flying machines and nuclear war? Like, what is this? What does that mean? Maybe the cataclysm started here. Maybe the Great Flood started there. Like, we don't know, right? Because it was said that after the war, the Great Flood came and Krishna fled Earth. So it's really fascinating to understand the story of all, how it ties into all these other ancient cultures as well. Lord Indra, now I'm getting a little off topic, but now you're getting me excited. So Lord Indra was always depicted as elongated skull, red tufts, and slightly lighter skin, and from Patala. And if you take India and you go through, and you just kind of dive right through the center of the earth, there's South America. And in South America, Peru specifically. And that's what they used to call Patala. Patala was the underworld, the under region. And Lord Indra would fly his Vimana, they're called Vimanas in the ancient Indian texts, and come to India, and vice versa. They used to also go there
Wow, I
in their
wonder if there's a Viracocha connection because I was just in Peru 2 weeks ago, or sorry, last week. I was there for 2 weeks, and I never heard about underground tunnels there ever in my life. And then the day we get there, I hear about them, and we actually
Mm.
go and we see there's an entire vast network of underground tunnels that go miles and miles and miles deep into the ground.
Patala, the underworld, quite
Yeah.
literally. Yeah. So they would go through India into the caverns and then they would make it to the other side. Um, and also, that's also very well documented across a lot of the ancient civilizations is that because of everything that was happening on Earth, they had to find places to live underground. They had to, there's no choice. And so who knows from thousands of years before that what was going on during, the nuclear winter and all of this kind of what was going on Earth, you know? So really for just fascinating stuff. History fascinates me so much. And it's like the unwritten history, not the history we learn in school. It's like the stuff that we're like really curious about. That's like our soul, it's like a piece of our soul is attached to that ancient history. And so I might started emailing all these companies saying like, do you have any footage? Do you have maps? Do you have something I can look at? Do you have pictures
You have
of
a
the temple?
treasure map for me?
Like, I don't know what I'm looking for. Where is the temple? I'm just sitting there like looking at like the old school Google Maps and they don't even have the satellites of it because it was just so old and half the streets were missing. And I was like, oh my God, like, am I gonna find this place? And I was like freaking out quite literally because I was going by myself. So I get to India and the next 24 hours were very bizarre. I checked. I remember the reception was really bad, no Wi-Fi, and it was like sub 3G connection. It was like horrible. I'm like sitting there trying to just like get one email at a time. And somebody emailed me from India, a person that I had emailed 2 or 3 days before I landed, and he goes, "Hey, we'd love to send out a video guy to come film you. We're inspired by your story, and we don't have any. As long as we can share the footage, it's cool." And I said, yeah, I guess so." So this guy shows up the next day at my door in India, in a city that I've never been to film me. And so I was like, this is being led by some divine spirit here, because I was gonna just do this thing. Like, here I am, look at this ancient temple. And now I have this guy with this thing on his shoulder and has a mic hooked up, and I'm just like, wow, what's going on?
Free
So
videographer, right?
a real videographer, yeah,
Yeah.
official videographer. They're the largest. They're like National Geographic of India, basically.
Wow.
The name is missing me right now, but they are basically the National Geographic of India. So it was really cool, and that led me onto this wild goose chase, to be honest with you. It's like I went to the temple. They wouldn't let us film inside. But we filmed on the outside. Then we went to Bet Dwarka, which is an island off, and you have to take a boat there or ferry. And you see all these ancient structures and ancient ruins there. And I was like, man, like I could feel the energy, the people, the belief, the faith, this ancient temple from 1000 AD, which was built upon another temple, which was built upon another temple because the water kept rising. And so eventually they started finding stuff, as you went out more and more to shore that was older and older and older and older. Some of it being dated back close to 30,000 years ago. And you're like, 30,000 years ago? Like, that is bizarre, you know? And as I started doing, while I was there, I started frantically like emailing people, calling people, being like, hey, I'm in town. I want to interview you. I have this video guy with me. I want to interview anyone I can while I'm here. And so it led me to like three different cities. We interviewed like university experts, and then we interviewed like the head of one of the head of ASI, which is Archaeological Survey of India. And it was just interesting because I think academics doesn't allow you to say what your beliefs are. You can only say what's by the book and what's by science. So the answers I was like, hey, why were the excavations stopped? If we have proof that Krishna was possibly living there, then and that's the heritage of India, like why wouldn't you want to do more research? And what about these Vimanas, man? Like these flying machines, dude. Like,
Don't you want to
uh,
find him?
can we go find them? Did you find them? What's going on, And a lot of it was just like pushing me off and kind of saying, hey, nothing happened and there's no proof of this. And we just stopped excavating because people stopped asking questions. And I'm like, I'm asking questions. You don't think everyone else is asking questions? So it felt weird, like mysterious to me, you know? And the answers I got eventually from a couple different people was there's geopolitical issues in the area with Pakistan. Not that it shares waters, but it's nearby. If India claims that Krishna was there and lived there, it could cause a geopolitical event. So that was the one thing I got. The other thing was funding money. Where does funding and money actually go, and what's important and what's not important to the government, and how that functions. So the way I perceived it, it felt like ignorance, to be honest with you. And I was like, I just kept pushing them, and no one would really give me any answers. Kind of just all led to dead ends. So here I am flying back to America, being like, what am I going to do with all this footage? Like, I just filmed for 7 days and I don't even know what I said. Like, I just got on camera and just started shooting and interviewed a bunch of people. And the word documentary, like flashing, documentary, 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 documentary. I was like, wow, I don't even know. I was like, I guess I've done marketing videos. It's the same thing, but it's in a different format. And yeah, I was like, okay, fine. So I took it, did a ton of research, wrote the whole script, produced it, directed it, edited it. No, I didn't edit it, sorry. I narrated it, and I got it all edited, and then I released it. And it went viral. Like it, couple million views in just a few weeks, actually. And I think since then, I think across all the different channels that it's on, it's had like tens of millions of views. And went viral. And so it was really cool and a wonderful experience. And since then, I shot another documentary, which is called The Natural Law behind me, which is not related to ancient, well, it is, it's ancient medicine, but not really like ancient mysteries and all of that. And backing up, going back to the story of Dwarka, when I finished the movie, there was too much proof from excavation standpoint, from an archaeological standpoint, that this city wasn't easily older than 3 to 4 thousand years old, if not 5 to 7 thousand years old. The verbal tradition that has been passed down through the Bhagavad Gita, through hymns, through songs, through mantras, it's still there. Why do people still live there? Why is the place still called Dwarka? There's still a lineage to this. It can't just be made up. And then three, and this is the really beautiful one, was archaeoastronomy. So in the ancient texts, especially Sanskrit texts, they used to talk about what's happening on the planet, kind of like how we do. We have news and it's like September 12th or October 15th or whatever it is. There's some date, right? They didn't have an exact calendar like that. Their calendar were the sky. So they would say that this planet is in this house, and it's this many degrees, and they would write out the sky and then talk about what's going on. And that is present in the whole entire Mahabharata and Bhagavad Gita, where they talk about what is going on in the stars and then what's going on the planet at the time. And there was a researcher from the University of Ohio who did research, and you can use software, astronomy software, to look backwards into the sky because it's all based on cyclical movement. So you can actually show where it was, and you can show it in the future too. And it went back to, we plugged in all of that data, plugged in all of that information, and sure enough, there it was, 3067 BC. And it was irrefutable. It matches up with the archaeological digging up of all the evidence. It matches up with the verbal tradition and everything that's written in the books. And it matches up with astronomy software. So this did exist. This did happen there. When we went back about 2 years later, for the Discovery Channel, we actually got to go diving. We had to get a permit. We went diving underwater, and I was on Expedition Unknown. You may be familiar with that show. We dug up an ancient stone anchor that we pulled out. And it was like thousands of pounds. We tied a string to it and we pulled it up and we pulled it onto the boat. And then we put it back, of course. But a city existed there. We took a sonar out there while we were there, and there's a city twice the size of Manhattan underneath the water with very clear lines and roads and structures that used to be there. So there's no doubt in my mind that this city existed there and that this wisdom was from there. And the stories of the Vimanas and the stories of these ancient wars, there's definite proof to them. And I'm going to share one more thing, and then I'll pause, and we can move on or talk about it more. Was the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, just last year, or maybe even this year, 2023 or 2024, went to Dwarka, went diving, and did a prayer on the underwater. He literally put on like a whole entire suit, went underwater and did like an ancient ritual under the water where this land is said to have existed. So it's really fascinating that now there's interest in India about this. They're going to start doing a ton more research in that area. It's really exciting times. And yeah, I hope we get to find flying machines and proof of nuclear weapons and all the city of gold, quite literally the twice the size of Manhattan and made of gold in the ancient texts is what it said.
Dude, that is wild. It's unbelievable. And it's crazy because you would think there's so much interest, somebody would take the initiative at some point and make this happen, right? Whether it's the Indian government or whether it's wealthy financiers who really want to know. Because, like in India, it's very different than the rest of the world. Like our mythology is our history. Everybody believes in the mythology, right? Of the temples and the gods, and we believe that everything existed in its time. And it takes one kid from, Jersey originally, and then, going to California, living in, the high life in La Jolla, and deciding, like, you know what? I have an interest. I want to make this happen, and just going without any kind of plan, without any knowledge of how you're going to do this. And you made it happen, and you just unlocked tons of history and tons of secrets to inspire the next group of people. So first of all, I just want to just highlight that because in life, a lot of people wish things were the way they were, or so somebody would take initiative, but it really begins with us as individuals to make it happen and take a risk because you could have just easily stayed in a really nice position of continuing your business and doing that. But again, like you were drawn, like your soul called you to do this. And, I think even like having the sickness and the poor health really drove you to the next level of your life, which is really incredible.
Hmm. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's totally true. I definitely inspired many, many, many others online and YouTube. Now, if you type Dwarka, there's like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of videos. And like before I was the only like search result.
You're gonna be on the Mount Rushmore of Dwarka. You're gonna carve your face in the
Yeah, and
rocks
I'm
over there.
so glad
Yeah.
because we need it's people like us who create content and are curious about life and history and who are we and why are we here. It's important. I think we're sometimes so stuck on the future that a lot of our answers are already like in the past.
Absolutely. And I really believe, like, I reflect on this a lot. Growing in that dual culture, right? Indian, coming here to the United States, being first generation over here. I think we're so gifted because we get to see the best of both worlds, the Western culture and all its technology and advancements, but also the ancient knowledge of the East, which is timeless. And when I was young, I was in the same position. My mom and dad read me all these amazing stories, and it just like it blew my mind, and I just wanted more and more and more. I wouldn't let my dad go to bed because I wanted to hear all these stories. And then kind of like getting a little bit older, I kind of abandoned a lot of that stuff because yeah, we're born in and trying to raised in this dualistic place, and sometimes you don't fit in the Indian side of the family because
Yeah.
you're too American. In the American group, you're too Indian. So I always felt so out of place, and I was very introverted at the time. So I kind of abandoned the Indian. I'm like, no, I don't want to be known as the Indian guy or have Indian friends. Like I would just literally try to just be totally American, which it was taking away from my roots and my ancestry and my individuation. And slowly by slowly, I started coming back to it, and I swung back hard because yeah, I appreciate so much the fact that we had this opportunity to have both the best of both worlds. And you look at the United States, there's a lot of successful first generation Indian Americans is because they're
Mhm.
carrying both of those cultures with them every day in the way they live their lives.
Yeah. There's a certain really beauty to the Indian culture, and that is like the how dynamic it is. The colors, the mantras, the yantras, the acting, the dancing, the music, I mean, there's so much culture. There's just so much, it's so dynamic. And I think that creativeness and that function of creativeness really is really powerful for anybody, to tap into some of that ancient wisdom from India. It's really powerful, you know. I always kind of jokingly say, meditation in the 70s, 80s, and probably even 90s was kind of like lame, and you were like some weirdo if you were meditating and like, oh, he's a hippie, like. And then that became somewhat normalized. And then yoga came along. People are like, what are you doing standing on your head, dude? Like you're upside down, cow dog, dog? What are you doing? What is that? Right? So, and then all of a sudden it's like yoga's everywhere, right? And then after yoga and is Ayurveda, I believe at least. But you look at the culture of India, and there's like bindis and dots and bangles and nose rings. Like everyone has a nose. Every woman, at least a lot of women nowadays have nose rings, right? So it's like a lot of these ancient Indian things have been brought over to the West and made like cool. Even toe rings, they're originally from India, actually. And you're just like, wow. And what's so fascinating about all of that is that there's actual science behind it too. Is that the toe rings actually have science on why you would put a silver made out of silver on your toe, on a specific toe, because it triggers certain points in your body and then sends certain electrical signals into your nervous system. Like what kind of like they were genius, like it was brilliant. Yeah. The Vedas are so fascinating. They're so fascinating.
Yeah, it's a timeless knowledge base, and anytime anyone wants to tap into it, it's open for all people. It's not a religion. It's a hall
Exactly.
of records for humanity, and the more we can look into it, even in a lot of the ancient texts, there's literally instructions on how to build nuclear reactors and
Mhm.
vimanas and all this kind of stuff. It's like all you need to do, like even CERN is like literally dissecting all of these texts to build their their hadron collider.
Exactly.
It's pretty wild.
So in the one of the ancient Vimanic texts, there's something called Chumbak Mani. Chumbak Mani is a very interesting material. In the ancient texts, Chumbak Mani meant you can make this material and you apply it as a lens to the bottom of your craft, and you'll be able to see under the ground to see if there's anything that's underground from a craft thousands of years ago, dude. Like why would you? What does that mean? And it had very specific instructions. So there's a company out of South India that got funding and recreated it, and they were able to see through. They didn't make enough of it, but they could see through just like a small little piece of like like cardboard or something like that to see if there's anything underneath. There had to be metal underneath it. It's like a metal sensor if there's anything metallic under the ground. And it's like stuff like that you're like science is just catching up, just catching up.
Absolutely. Yeah, you talk about science, you talk about architecture, and even, health in Ayurveda. These are sciences that are at least 5,000 years old. And let's get into a little bit about your new documentary, The
Yeah,
Natural Law, and tell us how you decided you wanted to start delving into this ancient medicine.
sure, yeah. Oh yeah, so just to back up real quick, if anyone wants to watch the Dwarka movie, you can go on YouTube, just type in Dwarka, Atlantis of the East, and you can check it out there. And so the natural law, what I have the poster behind me, was because I was sick, is why I started shooting the natural law in the first place. Like I said, the Western system failed me, surgery, um, prescribed drugs and ultrasounds and CAT scans and MRIs and blood tests. And oh my God, it was like a goose chase, literally a goose chase. And they kept telling me nothing's wrong with me. And I'm like, I'm in pain every day of my life. And I had gone to see an acupuncturist, chiropractors. I started doing exercise and meditating and red light sauna and like everything I could. And so while I was actually losing weight and feeling healthier and getting rid of all the, addictions of alcohol and cigarettes and whatever I was doing before, I felt better, but I wasn't feeling good. And I would have these bouts where I'd get migraines and stomach pains and just be completely out of it. And bowel movements would be completely off and sinus infections like every 2, 3 weeks. And it would just be like, oh, like, can I get a break? And so that's when I realized that like Ayurveda would probably be like my last ditch effort just because it's in my lineage. And I don't really have an option at this time. So I went and since I sold my companies off and wanted to push the reset button, I had some capital. And I said, you know what? I'm in the middle of finishing this Dwarka documentary. And I had already came back from India and I already started editing it and it was almost done. I want to work on another documentary because it inspired me. I was like, wow, like that thing was led by so much serendipity and it started going viral. Like, yes, I want to do this now, No, I want to make another movie. And so that's that along with me being sick was the inspiration for the natural law. And Ayurveda is an ancient science from India as well, over 5,000 years old. There are over 10,000 plants, 25,000 plants that have been identified in Ayurveda, and herbs that have certain properties of what they can do to the human body. There's over 10,000 different prescriptions for different ailments of things that happen in the body and how to actually make it. Some of them taking up to 100 steps. So something like that can't just be woo-woo science because they're telling you what plant to pick, how to dry it, how to crush it, how to mix it with these three other things, and then put it into a paste and then apply it. Like there's truth to this. So as I started digging in, I started to see the beauty of Ayurveda and what it's focused on and how it was created. And it was based on nature. And basically, nature is made up of the five elements. Everything we experience around us is made up of the five elements. And those five elements are ether or space, empty space. Like I'm moving my hand through empty space right now, right? That's ether. Um, Air. So there's air, right? If I'm doing this, I can actually feel the air going into my face. I can feel the air going into my lungs. There's the wind that blows, right? There's air everywhere. Then there's fire, right? There's this big, huge ball of fire in the sky that kind of powers our planet just a little bit,
Just a little bit.
and just a little bit. And we have fire here on Earth to do all kinds of things, right? And then after fire, there's water. Of course, there's water that we drink in our water cups, and we have oceans full of water. We have water in our body. Also about fire is that there's something in our body that keeps us at 97 or 98 degrees, right? Where does that actually come from? That is the form of fire. It's a form of heat that's inside of us, right? So that was something that the ancients knew. And now going back to water, we know that we have water inside of us, and there's water on the planet, and there's water in outer space. So water, it exists everywhere. And earth. Earth is the last element. And that is structure. Like we have bones and we have muscles and we have structure, right? We can see the planets in outer space. We can see the moon, right? That's all structure. It's because of the element of earth that we can see it. So these five elements, ether, air, fire, water, and earth, are what create and manage the whole entire universe, including the laptop that's in front of me is made up of the five elements. This glass with the water inside of it, made up of the five elements. The two lights that I have, five elements. Everything, the food we eat, the herbs we eat, you, me, the wall, the poster, everything we experience is made up of the five elements. And we experience that through our five senses. Everything we see, hear, touch, smell, taste. And so those five elements and the five elements and five senses
Senses.
are basically what the ancients said make up our whole entire experience of life. Everything. All the 3D reality that we can call our 3D reality, that is made up of the five elements. And when you combine these five elements, they turn into forces. They turn into physics, quite literally. Ether and air creates movement. It creates movement. So anything that has ether and air is called vata, which is movement. Everything in the whole entire universe is moving all the time. We have food moving through our digestive tract. There's ants on the ground calling outside. We're moving at some ungodly kilometers per second around the sun, going around some other. It's crazy. It's nuts. Everything in the galaxy is moving along within our bodies. So ether and air create vata, which is the Sanskrit word, which is movement. Then, when you combine fire and water, you get what's called pitta or transformation. Now, when we take the food into our body, it goes into our gut, it transforms. It turns into things that we can use, nutrients we can use, energy we can use, right? And that's transformation. Everything in the universe is constantly transforming. What's happening right now with my light over here, electricity is being transformed into a light that's shining light on me. It's being transformed. Everything is in constant transformation. So that's the other piece. And third force is water and earth. When you combine those two, you get what is called kappa energy, and that is structure. Everything in the universe has structure. Why are we not just, if we're made up of 75% water, well, how come we're not just a puddle of water on the ground? Because we have structure. We're able to stand upright. We have bones, ligaments, structure to us. So vata, pitta, kapha, movement, transformation, and structure. Movement, transformation, and structure are the three physical forces that govern the whole entire universe with the five elements. And when things go out of balance with one of the elements or one of those forces, then that's what causes us to get sick and diseased. We're born with a certain constitution. When your parents, when you were conceived, your dad had a doshic makeup, a certain amount of those three different vata, pitta, kapha, or a certain amount of those five elements in him. And your mother had a certain amount. They were not exactly the same. They were different. When you were conceived, the combination of those two became you. So now
So,
you have a
question
certain,
question for
yeah.
you. So, your parents say they have a two doshic individual doshic makeups. Is it predictable that the kid will have this particular one, or is it always going to be a different mix? Because, obviously me and my sisters were all different in terms of the doshics.
And because your doshic makeup changes over time. So your sister will have a different doshic makeup because your parents were in a different state of mind. They were eating maybe different foods. They were, I don't know if they were older, younger, body's different, their thoughts are different, work's different, money's different. There's so many variances at play that, of course, you and your sister will have different doshic makeups. We all will have a slightly different doshic makeup, slightly, but we could say we're similar in the sense of like let's just say your dad had a little bit more fire energy and your mom had a little bit more water energy. Those two then become the average of those two become you. So that's how it kind of works. And if your mom had also slightly elevated fire energy, then that's going to bring your fire energy to a little bit higher. So that becomes you. And so with that being said, when you're born with that specific combination, you live your life, you eat certain foods, you go outside, you get some bacteria, you get sick, and you start worrying, whatever. Your dosha from what you were born with starts changing. And so Ayurveda says when that starts changing and you start experiencing the symptoms of that changing, even before you experience the symptoms of the changing, we can help you. Even if it's already progressed where the symptoms have gotten so bad that it's turned into a disease and it's turned chronic, we can even help you at that stage, reverse it, because it's all based on the five elements and these forces that are quite literally based in physics, movement, transformation, and structure. And so it's fascinating that they had this thousands of years ago, that they had some algorithm, quite literally an algorithm to health. And I'm just sitting there fascinating, while I went to go do one of the detox retreats that Ayurveda recommends, I started filming everybody for the movie. And I didn't want to be in the movie at the time, actually. I was just filming doctors. And then after the interview, I'd be like, I'd ask them about what Ayurveda is, how does it work? Because I didn't know much at the time when I started filming. So I was actually curious too. And then after the cameras were like being packed up, I'm like, so if you were getting migraines and had sinus infections and your back hurt and you had abdomen pains and your cholesterol is crazy, what would you do? And like each person that we interviewed gave me a little bit more like tidbit, and I'd go home and I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna start taking Trifla. Okay, I'm gonna start taking CCFT. I'm gonna start drinking this, and I'm gonna cut out this, and I'm gonna add this, and it turned into like an experiment for myself. And so over the next 4 years, we filmed many, many amazing experts, scientists, doctors, experts, influencers, Deepak Chopra, Dr. Vasant Lad, Sri Ravi Shankar. I mean, we had some of the world's most amazing Ayurveda experts in the world. We went all over India and so many different places. And so in 2018, so I started filming in 2013. Unfortunately, my health actually continued to get worse. Even though I was incorporating things and I was going to the detox retreats once or twice a year, I was keeping well, but like overall, my health was deteriorating slowly, like over time. And I was like, I know something is still wrong. So I went to India, and by this time, my left eye had stopped like kind of moving all the way to the left. I couldn't move my head to the left anymore, and my lips weren't moving as much on my left side, and it was all like hard. I had elevated white blood cell counts. It was like precancerous type of weird stuff was going on. And I was like really scared. Went to India and I was just like on a spiritual journey, like, please just save me. Like, I don't know what to do now. I feel like I'm dying. Like, I feel like I'm gonna die soon. And I took a genetic test in India, and when I got the results, it showed that I have celiac disease. And so here I was, 38 years into my life, and not knowing I had celiac disease my whole entire life. And celiac is a severe reaction to gluten, where your body just rejects it. It fights itself, quite literally just fights itself. And by this time, I had 7 to 8 ulcers and across my intestinal tract and in my stomach and stuff, and diverticulitis and inguinal hernia. And the Western system, the doctors, everyone that I spoke to, they said that there was no way I was allergic to gluten. Literally, the words out of their mouth. They said they refused to give me a gluten test.
Wow.
Refused, dude. And so here I was with this diagnosis, and I was just like, what the fuck? I mean, to be honest with you, like, and I had these ulcers, and I went. That's when I went all into Ayurveda. Obviously, cut all the gluten out, and I had to cut some other foods out to rebuild my gut. And I
It's
went all into
not easy as an Indian to cut gluten out. There's there's quite a bit of stuff that has
yeah.
gluten in it.
Yeah, it was definitely tough. And also just living, I mean, everything has gluten in it.
It's fun. Gluten's a lot of
Soy sauce
fun.
has freaking gluten in it. Like, who would have thought?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was tough, and I did it. And within like 60 days of the herbs and all the regimen I was doing and cutting out gluten, started feeling like amazing. And then I got my yoga certification, started working out like a beast, just trying to reverse all the damage that was done to my physical body and supplements and everything. And it was about 3 years into that in 2021, and I was like in meditation. I remember just smiling ear to ear, and I was like, I'm not in pain. I'm happy. My business is good. My family's happy, healthy. This is the best I've ever felt in my life, like literally in my life. I was like, holy shit, I have to finish this documentary. I remember in my meditation, I pictured the hard drive of where my footage was. It was literally sitting in my garage. And I'm like, I filmed 50 of the world's experts on Ayurveda. It healed me, and I had witnessed so many other people heal themselves. We had cancer people that we interviewed, MS, high blood pressure, like random autoimmune conditions that I'm just like, Ayurveda is the answer. It's like the missing piece to our healthcare system in America and in the world. And it's widely used in Europe and India. It's just America is not very useful. And I'm sitting there like, I have to finish this film. So I finished the film, and released it. Took us about 2 extra years to finish the film, and in 2023, just last year, we released it. I ended up putting myself in the film and talking about my story also. Um, and it was a beautiful, beautiful experience, labor of love, and also just from my own experience, just to release it to the world. And since then, we've been in 9 different film festivals. We won like 7. It's been such a journey. We went viral on Instagram. We're now on Amazon. We're about to be on Gaia in about a month. I think I'm allowed to say that because the contract signed. Um, so, like, yeah, very, very exciting and looking forward to healing so many more people through our platform online at The Natural Law. It's called The Natural Law. Um, yeah, just so excited. Yeah.
That's wild, man. What a story. And it just shows me because yeah, my sister's an Ayurvedic doctor. I've been a part of kind of like the knowledge base of it for a very long time. And I realized that our bodies are naturally healthy when we're in balance. And our divine right is to be healthy. It's the choices that we make, whether it's the thoughts, also the toxins that we're exposed to, the food choices, all of these things, when our mind, our bodies, our spirits are out of balance, that's when the body is kind enough to show us a little bit of symptoms. And if we don't start making the changes to reroute, get back in balance, just like anything, if a business is hemorrhaging money, how is it supposed to survive, right? If a body is in pain, the body is telling you, hey, there's something that we need to do here. So Ayurveda is always going to give you that balance point, and it's like anything in life, you have to stay on top of it. But yeah, I
It's
think
a
a lot of
very
people,
powerful medicine and
yeah,
works very well, and it works with nature. It respects the intelligence of your body.
it's unbelievable, man. So yeah, what is next for you in terms of the next project? Hopefully, you don't have to get sick to to start another amazing undertaking. But
Yeah, yeah. This time I feel happier, healthier, and definitely more in tune than I've ever been. And there's so many amazing things. One of the things I'll mention to you is plant medicines have become a very interesting to me because when I was trying to figure out what was wrong with me, 2 years before I got my diagnosis, I went to Peru. I went to Iquitos and I went on a shamanic journey with ayahuasca. And I was there for 10 days and I think I did like 7 or 8 ceremonies. And I remember going the first day, the day I landed, and like, okay, we're going. And I was like, all right. What? I was like, I just got here. And, the shaman was like, of lineage, like his father was an ayahuasquero. He was an ayahuasquero, his grandfather, his great-great-grandfather. And so it was really a beautiful experience. And so at the time I was getting over, the businesses and I knew that I still like wanted to dabble in like cigarettes and alcohol, but I didn't really. I was like, not that I was like like I had an addiction, but like I had a need to want to do it more often than not. Maybe like every 2 days I needed a drink, or I wanted to smoke a cigarette every like 2 or 3 days, or like just had this urge to do it. So anyway, in 2016 I go and the shaman goes, um who here has high tolerance? And I'm like, ah, shit. I was like, I'm from Jersey. Yeah. I'm like, I
give
have
me
a
your
such
worst.
a high tolerance. So he called me up and basically everyone with high tolerance, and I didn't know this at the time. So when you go on like I wouldn't say normal dose, but most average dose of ayahuasca is about a shot. It's about a shot glass worth. This guy gave me this much in a glass. I didn't know, so I'm sitting there like gulp, gulp, gulp. I'm like, ugh, this tastes so bad. Gulp, gulp, like, and I was off to a different dimension, and I saw many facets of myself that I've never seen before come to life. Talking with ancient beings, getting healings on my body from ancient beings or alien type figures, skeleton type figures. Really bizarre and insanely amazing journey. And I wrote in my journal 2 years before my diagnosis, you have ulcers, stop eating white carbs. Literally, 2 years on ayahuasca. So, plant medicine, I feel, has a future in how health is, not just Ayurveda, also like psychedelic plant medicines, all the whole plant kingdom. Everything in the plant kingdom is there for our benefit, for us, for to use to heal emotionally, spiritually, physically, whatever that means. The earth is here to provide. She is our mother. She created everything here for us to experience. So the question of like what's next for me is really an interesting one. And there's a few things, as an entrepreneur, we always have like millions of ideas and we want to go and do everything. It's like, I want to do this and that and boom, ba, ba. We have a retreat coming up. So that's going to be one of the few things that we're doing. These detox retreats, I had this vision to create detox retreats for just everyday people and bring people to India for the retreats that I was also doing to get these detox retreats. And also going to Mexico and Peru and doing retreats there as well. And we've done a few in the past after my Dwarka documentary, actually. And so we have a detox retreat coming up where the trials and the studies that have been done on these types of detox retreats, they're called panchakarma, where after just 5 days of panchakarma, it reduces the level of toxins in the cells by 50% from phthalates and glyphosates and all these nonsense garbage that we get in our foods,
Plastics and all this crap. Yeah.
plastics and water supply and all of it, right? And so we're really excited to be bringing that hopefully and making it mainstream in America. As an adjunct to that, we bought 22 acres of land in Mexico and we're building out a healing center in Mexico because the need for this is so important. We have a vision to build 108 of these centers around the world so that we can provide healing to everybody and build community and show that the natural kingdom, the natural world can be used to heal the human body on so many different levels and facets. And so really I've dedicated a lot of my life to this and ancient wisdom and healing and that's the big thing that's kind of going on. I have a couple different projects, and if I'm to talk business, it's like a holding company, and then we're going to be raising funds through a venture capital fund and fueling a bunch of these cool different projects that we're either going to help or we want to help with, or the ones that we're incubating ourselves. Because we want to make a measurable impact on consciousness. And the way to do that is not only through my website and through my retreats I run and the land that I bought and all that, but like, how do we invest in the future of all these companies that are on the same path? And how do we measure? And then if we can show through measurement, then how do we go to future governments and the people of the world and say, we have proof. Like, look at the fastest way to solve diabetes is like go do XYZ, you know? I don't know, I'm making stuff up. Like, go do psilocybin, do these 3 meditations, and go on a panchakarma retreat. Like, boom, meditation. I mean, diabetes might be gone, or anxiety, or depression, or PTSD, or all these mental disorders that we have in our world nowadays. Ayurveda had the answers for these millions, thousands of years ago. And if you look at the plant science of South America and the wisdom that they have and Chinese, brilliant, brilliant wisdom. So really excited about bringing that back to the world.
So exciting. And I think that you look at the state of healthcare in the United States currently, hopefully it changes, but like we've tried a certain method of healing people and it obviously hasn't worked, spending more money than any other country on the planet, and we're one of the sickest nations, right? So I think that with new
63rd
what
healthiest country.
yeah. Yeah. And what's crazy is that, yeah, we still maintain to live long lives, which shows you the power of the human body to withstand so much bullshit, whether it's the dirty water, air, pollution, food with sprayed with glyphosates, but we're still able to make it. And, pharmaceutical drugs are just looking at one aspect. Obviously there's a reason for allopathic medicine. If I break my arm, I'm going to absolutely do it. But
Oh, without a doubt. You have a
yeah,
stroke, get hit by a bus, go to the hospital. Don't look for an Ayurvedic practitioner.
100%. But when we're looking at the body as a whole, getting it back in balance, and it's amazing that entrepreneurs, you're like yourself, and the stuff that I do at my wellness center as well, we're looking at the body in its entirety, and also looking at the mind, the body, and the spirit. Conscious entrepreneurship is really going to elevate our world. It has to be that way. And I love the mission that you're on and to do it at such a high level. Plant medicine is one of the reasons why I went into this space as well. I had an incomplete life, experience where I was able to see my entire life, have a life in review, make a lot of changes. I was going down the wrong path of very much selfishness and just going after money and things like that, and not really doing it from an open-hearted perspective. I had to make so many apologies, forgive so many people after my experience, and once I did that, my health started improving, and then that led me to opening up a wellness center here in Jersey City. And
Beautiful.
it really, like, life is so incredible, and we're living in such an amazing time to be alive that we have the opportunity to live out our mission and to live out our passions.
Hmm. Yeah, it's beautiful. And, with RFK coming into office, I think we're going to see a lot of change. Ayurveda by some groups has been called pseudoscience, even though there's clinical trial after clinical trial after clinical trial, and it's
5,000 years
5,000
of
years. And
proof. Yeah.
I thought of this quote one day, and it was like, it's just something that came to me. And now I see people are starting to use it, is that the truth is timeless. So if something existed and lasts for 5,000 years, there's no reason you would never just keep spreading a lie. It has to stop at some point. So the truth is timeless. Whatever has lasted eons is usually the truth. Versus, like you said, big pharma, and then you find out like 3 years later, like, oh, well, actually, it causes heart disease, and 30% of the people are dying. It's like, well, why? Then why was that pushed through? And what happened to the trials? And so we live in a little bit of a broken system.
Yeah.
This is a systemic issue. It's not like it's a systemic issue. We got to change the system, and big food, big pharma. There's lots of stuff in that world that needs to be, and big health, all three of those need to be kind of re-looked at with a new lens, and it needs to be functional medicine and integrative medicine, and we have to start looking at other options because the Western medical system is failing us. It is failing us.
100%. And I'm so glad we're living in that time where there's so many brave people that are making those changes. So yeah, I'm super excited about RFK overseeing, our health, and it's long needed. And when we're a healthy nation, then we start living better to collectively in unity, happiness. But when everybody is sick, how can you live your best, most fulfilling life when you're sick all the time? It's a pretty simple equation. Dude, so let me ask you a question. Why do you
Yeah.
think you came here to planet Earth as Amish Shah? What did you want to experience?
Oh wow, that's a deep question. Now you're going into the weeds a little bit. Okay. For what it's worth, and people can call me crazy as much as they want to, I have a very specific mission here on Earth. I came to that realization in many different plant medicine journeys, in many meditations. I've gotten my yoga certification. I've flown all across the world. I haven't sat in across shamans and gurus and amazing people in my life. And it's the same message every single time in those experiences. And in 2016, I got this hit when I got back from Peru. Well, while I was in Iowa, while I was there in Peru, was just like everything that you've been thinking about in terms of the technology and the wisdom and all this like ancient stuff that you have inside of you is not random. The stuff that comes to you that may not make sense, and these futuristic types of technologies that come to you or are ancient, but also based in the future. And it's not just made up. So start documenting it. And I was like, what? I guess so. I'll start documenting it. So around 2016, I started writing some things in my notepad about this technology and this wisdom that I used to get, specifically around yantras, sacred geometry, and how to use sacred geometry for technology. If you look at computer circuits, they're sacred geometry with crystals in them, with electricity going through them, basically, right? And so that always fascinated me. And I got this hit that was like, start documenting it. So as I started documenting it, more and more started coming out. I've been studying the Sri Yantra since 1996 when I was 16 years old. So over the last 20 something years, I've been studying this symbol called the Sri Yantra. It's right here behind me, this one. you might not be able to say it because there's a pattern around it, but in the middle right here is a Sri Yantra.
Yeah, yeah. It looks like
And so
cymatics.
the Sri Yantra was always fascinating to me. I have a story with that from 1996, but I won't get into that. But I was always fascinated with it. In 1998, I got a tattoo of it on my back just because I was so fascinated with it. And I started reading more on it. I would get books from India in Sanskrit, and I would literally translate Sanskrit to English to understand, like, what are they talking about? What is this symbol? Why does it represent the universe? What are the mathematics of it? What does it represent spiritually? What is the metaphysics of it? I'm trying to understand every component of the Sri Yantra, the sound, the syllable, the sound, the shabda, all the different things of the Sri Yantra. And I never really understood why. And it was in that ayahuasca journey in 2016. That's what I was thinking, the ayahuasca journey in 2016, which is a full 20 years later of when I started liking or studying the Sri Yantra, was like, that's the path. And like all of this stuff started coming out with me. I have a binder like this thick, literally this thick of all these notes that I've written, diagrams, schematics of wisdom that I've received um, from that. In my journey in Peru, I was speaking with Osiris and in a language I didn't understand, and many of the other deities were around me and basically said, the sun needs your help. And I was like, okay. And so we kept you sick your whole entire life so that you can bring back the wisdom because for the sun. And I was like, okay. And so we're going to heal you. You're going to be healed over the next few years, basically. And I found out within 2 years of what was going on with me. But you have to document this and you have to bring this technology to the world. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, what is going on? So I've been documenting, like I said, for the last 9 years, basically. And I have a binder like that thick of all these things that came through to me since I was a child about this technology and the media behind it and how to create media behind it and what it represents and certain crystals and certain metals and how to connect them. And I wish I could tell you, and this is what my fascination with Dwarka too, like all these different pieces are connected, that there was this ancient Lemurian Atlantis type of technology that I'm here to bring back. And it starts off by creating awareness. And then from awareness, we will move into the land development and bring people to the land and heal them. And then from there, we'll start building technology and devices, bringing back and ushering in a new golden age to the world using this technology from the sun. In fact, I got sun codes like tattooed on my chest that were all, this is all like related. And so it's just been a wild journey. And that is why I'm here, to be honest with you. And I know it sounds wild and crazy and nuts,
Not
but
on
it's,
this podcast.
yeah,
We're
it
here
is.
for it.
It is wisdom from above, wisdom that I could not argue with, wisdom that I've received multiple times over and over again that keeps streaming through me. And it's stuff that I write, so downloads that I get that I don't even understand what it means till I Google it and actually research it because I just don't know what it even means. And then so like it came in like a very do you know what sutras are? Like sutras are like the pearls of a sentence. So they don't actually tell you the whole sentence, it's just like codified sentence that gives you like the basics you need to understand what the message is. So you can unpack a sutra into like many different sentences to tell you the meaning of it. So that's what I felt like I received, and I've been unpacking it since. And one of the first things it said I needed to do was to acquire land. And sure enough, just this past year, we acquired land. And I wrote that like 5 years, 6 years ago. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's just interesting the way that the universe works. And I'm just following, I think, what feels like wherever the divine is leading me. And it's a battle between the ego and what I'm hearing from divine and where that is and how open my heart is going to be to surrendering. And that's all I'm here to do, really. is surrender more, love more, and bring healing technology to the world. It's like, and try to limit the ego as much as possible. And that's just my mission in life. So
So powerful, brother. Thank you for sharing that. And what is God in your definition, and what role does it play in your life?
another crazy, weird concept that I'd like for us to imagine here. I believe we live in a fractal world. Everything is constantly falling upon itself in infinity. The Ouroboros. We've seen this symbol across millennia for thousands and thousands of years. Is the snake eating its tail and the infinity sign, and it's all connected. The My definition of God is just whatever I experience in that infinite state. When I'm in awe, when I am breathless to some extent, like, whoa, like, oh my God, like you're in that ecstatic kind of like state. That is my definition of God. Because in that moment, we're in love, we're happy, we're pure, we're connected to source, and we know our mission. And so, whatever that connection is, that is my definition. And I think it just keeps falling upon itself. It's infinite in nature. So we forget our infinite nature, and that's what makes us forget, right? We think like we're dead at the end of our lives, but are we really? We don't really know. In this 3D world, we might be dead.
Maybe it's just the beginning of the game, right?
Maybe
When that
exactly.
life ends.
So a piece of me also thinks like, yes, I'm glad you said the game because I was going to go there. Was like, it's all just a game. We are here for dharmic purposes and to live our karma and do good on the planet and all of that. But at the end of the day, it's just a fucking game, like a simulation that we live in. And so none of it really matters. So nothing should be taken too seriously.
Yeah, I was journaling. Thank you for sharing that. I was journaling in Peru. I was like the sun was hitting my forehead and I was just like in awe. And one of the sentences I wrote is live as light as a feather and with the creational energy of all the mass in the universe. So when you
Hmm.
can live inside that range, which is pretty much everything, but be intentional about it and you have access to both. And that's really, the download that I got is just yeah, just to be present, really. Just live in this eternal present moment.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the divine, that's everything. That's it's all the understanding you need in the universe.
Yeah, dude. I want to thank you so much, Amish, for coming on. It's an honor to have you on,
Yep.
and I'm super excited to learn more about everything that's unfolding in your life. We'll have to definitely do this again. How can we learn more about you? What's the best way for our audience to find you?
Yeah, there's a few ways you can find out about me. You can go to my website. It's amish-shah.com, not actually hyphen, but a dash. So amish-shah.com. And you can also go to thenaturallaw.com to check out the documentary. And on Instagram and Facebook, if you want to learn more about Dwarka and ancient civilizations, you can go to Ancient Explorers and go to our page and check out some of the content we post there.
Amazing. Thank you so much, brother.
Go, thank you.